So why don't we put each other to the test here, Dana?
Yes.
And
we didn't talk about this beforehand, so neither of us really knows what the other one's going to say.
I think that, one of the things that we've agreed to is authenticity and, F-bombs and, other questionable language is fair game at this point.
Yes.
So, and those of you that know me know that I talk like a trucker. So, there'll be no surprises here. But one of the questions I think that what we're really going to focus on when we're talking to our guests is, what are some of the things that you've learned, right? With every mistake, there is an opportunity for learning and growing. And hopefully, we can get kind of some of those nuggets of people that have been, in the marketing and content marketing industry for a long time, sales as well. I know we're planning to talk to some sales leaders. What mistakes have you made and what did you learn from it? And, what could our listeners learn? So I've got a couple things here I'd like to share.
Let's
how about
go.
You?
Yes, let's roll. I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So I lots of mistakes over the years, of course, I more maybe than I would care to admit, but two kind of bubbled to the top, because I think one was so painful. And then one was, it took me a while to kind of, figure it out. So,
interesting.
So the first one was, and I this is kind of, I tell this story a lot. But, back in the day, prior to, email marketing being, as prevalent as it is, it was very hard to get email addresses. So when you were promoting webinars, which again, was a unstable and early technology in the late 90s, you had to do direct mail. And so we did these huge direct mail sends, to IT and business audiences. We had the BRC form that you would tear off, sign,
my gosh,
and
it's
then
so crazy.
send it back. And, creativity was flowing. We were doing one of these, and I was at the printer. I signed off on the blue line, and there was a mistake in the barcode. And so, it was caught before the mailing, but it was after the printing. And it was a very costly mistake because this was at the fairly beginning of my first agency.
Yeah.
We were bootstrapped on cash and couldn't go to the client and say, I fucked up. Well, I did, but I said, I fucked up and we'll pay for it.
We're going to pay for it. Yeah.
No, I, could never expect for the client to pay for my mistake. And it was my mistake. My signature was on the blue line.
Yep.
Like in Elf, remember when the guy didn't sign the last of the pages and it was like, Mr. Hobson, your signature is on these pages that are blank. Same thing. And I went and negotiated with my printer. And I said, can you work with me on the cost here to do this reprint? And kind of the takeaways from that are, slow down, double, triple check. The devil is in the details. And, it looked good. There were no typos. It was fabulous. But the barcode, was not the right barcode. And so, I will never make that mistake again. I probably will never be involved in another big direct mail campaign like that. Maybe, I don't know, who knows? But, the other thing I think, and this is kind of something that, Dana, I know you hear me talk about all the time, is it's about relationships. And I had the relationship with the printer where, I could go and I wasn't asking for favors all the time, but, this was a favor and I really needed some help, on kind of the cost of that reprint. So, all worked out well. We had hundreds of people attending the webinar as we
It is amazing anyone showed up when you think it had to go through the mail.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. I have samples somewhere. I ran across them in my last move, and it was like, oh my gosh, we did direct mail for webinars.
I think that's so interesting you say that, though, because I years ago did some old Dale Carnegie training, leadership training. And one of the things they talk about, and at the time, like, you're like, oh, that's the stupidest thing you've ever heard. But because the example they get, you have to put deposits in the trust bank so that when you need to take withdrawals, you can. And we used to joke about it, my husband and I, and I talk to my kids and but that's one of those things, right? That's the relationship piece of it, that if I've been a good partner in this, when I do fuck up, you're more likely to work with me. And it's the same with clients too, right? If I've built this good relationship and then I fuck up, it's much easier and we all do it.
Yes.
I mean, nothing's, as we're going to learn in this, in this podcast.
Have been made. Indeed. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dana. You're absolutely right. So my second, kind of thing that kind of bubbled to the top, and those who have known me for a long time know I like to party. I used to like to party a lot more than I do now because it was more fun and easier to get up the next day. But I did events for a long time, user conference, trade shows and the like, seminars, and was on the road a lot. And I just partied too much. And I think that it took me a while to realize that, when you had executives, that were there, and, as a woman in her, late 20s, maybe even early 30s, I probably would have been, if I knew now what I knew then, or if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have toned it down a bit or been a little bit more selective about, when I kicked up my heels, because, all the things, trying to number one, get up early and build a booth the next day, but also just, trying to get respect and
yes.
Earn my place at the table, although I think I was a lot of fun. I think it was one of those lessons that, that I learned along the way to, be a little bit mindful and put guardrails up for myself. So
I think that's I have those experiences too. And I'm guessing so many of us, especially young, we get out, we haven't done it. You're traveling for work. And looking back at some of those moments, not the best, right?
We survived. Yay. How about you, Dana? I mean, come on, let's fess up. I would love to hear your stories.
So, I thought about this too. Okay. So 2 bubbled up for me as well. And I'm sure there's many that'll come up throughout the season, but I think, one of them that stands out is, I helped launch, Content to Conversion, which is now B2BMX. Mm-hmm. And, I remember, so it was during a year that I was transitioning more to content for demand. And so I was still running the conference and still doing this. So I probably had too much on my plate, but I was doing the budget, and I made a really big budgeting mistake, enough like it was not. And it was a year that sales were slightly down. And it was one of those things where literally just the Excel formula, a line wasn't added in there. And it was basically the entire food budget. So was not adding up. So it's not a small thing. It wasn't like, the curtains or something for the booths. It was a large chunk of the budget. And I think we caught it before you get to the show, but I had to go to my boss and essentially be like, I need more money. I screwed this up. It's too late. We have to buy the food. Contracts are signed. We need to feed the guests. We probably have to sell more then. So I have to go to the salespeople. We got to sell more to make up this difference. And so it was, I think, an exercise in I think it was the first time I had such a massive error that I had to go to somebody and kind of really fess up. Little things like no big deal. I had a misspelling in a subject line, which still not a great thing, but this felt much bigger to me. And especially because I owned it and I felt really responsible. And so I think, the it was probably a big turning point for my life, like learning that it's okay to say I fucked up. But it's a hard thing to do. And I think as a woman too, and having to go to a man too. And there was a lot of that was just really difficult for me to do. And, there's moments that went through my head, like, do I do this? Can I fix this? Can I hide it? Do I have to say anything? And so I think, the lesson just, I think is you said it earlier too. The details are so important, especially what we do in marketing. We're all moving so fast and, that's where mistakes are had. So it's slow down and double check everything. But I think the other lesson is that, like you kind of said with a partner is if you're good at what you do and you trust in who you are, what you do, everybody makes mistakes. And so trusting that by being honest about your mistakes, it's going to be okay. Right. Yeah. Like nobody was like, I didn't lose my job over it at least.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I have to tell you, and, kudos to you for starting, what became an amazing event over, still is an amazing event. And I didn't go the first year. That was in Times Square, New York. I went the second year. But I remember the feedback that we got, that it was a fabulous event. So clearly nobody was hungry. So
no,
yay.
Really good caterers, especially those first few years. Yes. So it was fun.